Thanks. Hi, ladies. Great. Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome. Ziad, you're giving us a lot of energy, so I appreciate it. I'm on the West Coast, so it's morning time. I'm feeling good.
I'm glad. I'm glad.
Awesome. Hi, Rachel and Katie. I think we might have
Hi.
lost I not for a second, but oh, there we go. Great to have you guys all on today.
Thanks for
Thanks
having
for
us.
having us.
Having us.
Awesome. Yes. Hello, Brand Innovators team out there. We're excited. I'm personally excited to chat with you amazing women who have had quite the career. Just to get right into it, I definitely want to start with kind of giving the audience a glimpse of what your roles are and sort of some of the things that your teams are focused on this year. Definitely want to get into the meat of how you got there and all of the juicy stuff. But just to start, want to tell us a little bit about your roles and what your teams are focused on? Rachel, do you want to give us a start?
Yeah, sure. I'll kick it off. So I oversee marketing for a company called Made by Gather. Many of you probably don't know what Made by Gather is and what we do, but we actually are a portfolio of kitchenware brands. So we make cookware, small kitchen appliances, and we distribute primarily B2B, so to retailers like Walmart, Williams-Sonoma, Target. We also have a private label business for many of those key partners. And then we also have a rapidly growing portfolio of consumer brands. So Crux is one of those, which is on fire right now. We launched a collaboration with Ghetto Gastro, a Bronx-based culinary collective, in September of this year. And yesterday we launched beautiful kitchenware in partnership with Drew Barrymore, who's our creative director and co-founder. So hopefully everyone has seen the press. Really, really exciting stuff that we're working on. And the way that we kind of think about marketing at our organization is what we call B to B to C. We have a somewhat complicated dynamic of thinking about our customers, the retailers, as kind of one segment of who we market to. And then there's, of course, the end consumers, which is very, very important. And I would say top of mind as it relates to Gen Z and how do we connect with them.
Awesome. It's great to hear. Katie?
Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Berry. I am coming to you from Minneapolis. I work for US Bank. I'm the agency relations director, so I manage all of our marketing agencies. So great to see Ziad. We're always looking for new agency partners. And I also previously managed our paid social media and our branded content partnerships. So certainly something where we found that Gen Z is more interested in hearing from brands they trust, as opposed to sort of stodgy old banks. I think that there's definitely a reputation out there for that. Really looking forward to being here and having this conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, and I definitely want to dive into some more tactical things. Inat, do you want to give us an intro and what your teams are focused on?
Sure. So, Anat Ravine, super happy to be here. I head up M Live, which is Marriott's real-time command center. So, what does that mean? Well, it means a lot of things. It's a really exciting and fun space to be in. We're very focused on social and social listening as it relates to reputation brand management. So, what's being said out in the ethos of social is really important to us. Pre-COVID, we were doing some really fun stuff as it relates to surprising and delighting our Marriott Bonvoy members on property with some amazing experiences. Hope to get back to that soon. We also identify macro and emerging trends based on social listening. So really fun and interesting things as to like the pulse of where's next in terms of travel or in terms of leaning into nostalgia and kitsch and the uptick in proliferation of TikTok as it relates to recipe adoption and the feta pasta and all kinds of fun things like that.
I love that. I know travel is probably on a lot of our minds these days as we look a little bit more into the future and even try to make plans in that way. So really excited to hear about some of those things that you're working on, at least from a marketing standpoint. To dive a little bit into Gen Z and how we're looking to reach those audiences, are there any specific, I'd say, tactics or channels or like creative even messaging that you guys have sort of adopted to reach these younger consumers? Anyone want to jump in first?
This is Katie. I can go first. So I find that with banking, it's really interesting because we really have two audiences to target Gen Z. So first off, we're competing against the apps that people use. For a lot of Gen Z, something like a Venmo is really their bank. And so I think that there's a perception of why would I have sort of a brick and mortar bank or a more traditional bank. But what we find is that a lot of Gen Zs actually turn to their parents for advice. So we have messaging for parents on why US Bank is the right choice. And then we have messaging for Gen Z. But for the most part, when you open up your bank account, you typically would go into a branch still. I know that seems crazy, but a lot of people still go into their branches because you're going to bring a picture ID. You'll need to share your social security number, et cetera, just to prove that you are who you say you are, because finance is so heavily regulated and scrutinized. And so we have messaging for both audiences, and those are two audiences on very different channels. So for example, we might have a partnership with GQ or Condé Nast for their parents. And then for the younger audience, we're going to need to target something like a Snapchat or an Instagram or a TikTok.
Awesome to hear.
Yeah, I can jump in. So as thinking about kind of banking and kitchen appliances, I would say, Katie, you kind of nailed it in talking about how you message to two different audiences. In the case of our category, what we have seen, especially with COVID, obviously like blowing up the demand in our category in a really good way, is that there is this growing population of teenagers, specifically on TikTok, that are using our air fryers, our popcorn makers, our mini waffle makers, and they're creating just content that's going viral. So that feta pasta that you mentioned, you know, we're really thinking about, okay, there's messaging, and then there's how do we reach these content creators when, quite frankly, like TikTok was never even part of the conversation before COVID. So what that really forced us to do was throw our marketing calendars out the window, like really, really think about, okay, there's some things that we can plan in advance from an editorial standpoint, but there's a lot of stuff related to consumer behaviors for that teenager, you know, the kid who's still living at home but thinking about going to college, or may have you know, thought about what do they need for their dorm room, and now that dorm room may not even be a part of what they're, you know, going to be moving into in the next few months. So really like having that flexibility and that agility has been really critical to us from an organizational standpoint to make sure that we are, you know, adaptable and fluid as the consumer behavior keeps changing.
I love to hear that. I already can sense a through line of like being able to pivot quickly, adapt quickly, being nimble, just becoming ultra flexible people, I think, in general, and then specifically in reaching Gen Z. Einat, do you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we're in a little bit of a different place currently as it relates to marketing in terms of just creating the inspiration and creating comfort level for folks. We're definitely seeing an uptick in travel, especially with the proliferation of vaccines and what have you. But I would say we're definitely leaning into driving inspiration, getting folks, you know, thinking about, you know, wanderlust and what's next. So Instagram stories speak very well to that. We also have a Marriott Bonvoy traveler newsletter, which is really like, you know, top things of what's going on or different destinations, you know, bucket list and things of that sort. Prior to this, we were starting to lean more into short form video content in room, and hopefully we'll get back to that when the time comes.
I hear you. And when you mentioned it a little bit, Rachel, about planning and how it's sort of like we're sometimes thinking days or weeks ahead versus like way in the future, months and years. What does that process look like as you guys plan different programs, initiatives, like different activations, even if it is specific to social? How far in advance are you guys looking to formulate some of those plans?
Yeah. So kind of coming back to the way that we think about marketing on the B2B2C front, the B2B component, just given that we are in Target, we're in Walmart, a lot of those channel specific tactics, which are tried and true, we plan those very far out in advance, and we're always going to have to do that. And those, quite frankly, even through COVID, many of those essential retailers were still open, and our category, yes, e-commerce penetration certainly ticked up a little bit, but the store was still a very, very important touch point even for the younger generations, which actually was something we found in research that we didn't initially think was going to be true. So, you know, in-store merchandising, packaging, all of those things happen very far in advance. And then there is the social component and content creation that we tried to plan a quarter in advance in terms of our key moments, any new product launches for hero products, any new customers that we're bringing on board. And then we refine that about 2 to 4 weeks out. So that gives us the ability to, like for our Crux brand, for example, which I would say is the most left of center brand out of our portfolio, really gives us the ability to lean into cultural moments and, you know, more purpose-driven types of campaigns where we do have, you know, kind of a, I wouldn't say a slush fund, but we do have a budget that we can tap into to double down and support on some of those causes when there is a moment like Black Lives Matter, when there is Stop Asian Hate, and making sure that we're on top of those moments as they're starting to hit the social communities.
Awesome. That's good to hear. As we think about, you know, tapping into things that are relevant or things that are trending, have you and your teams, I guess, been pretty open to adopting? I know TikTok was definitely something. Have you been open to adopting new like creative strategies as well? Maybe, I don't know, leveraging influencers. There's been a lot of leveraging certain types of research to definitely formulate some of those creative or marketing strategies. Katie, do you want to touch on that a little bit about how that works for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we look to the older side of Gen Z, they actually have a lot of spending power. And I think sometimes we think about millennials, but the older side of Gen Z is out in the workforce. They're making a difference. So we actually, not that they weren't making a difference before, but now they're our colleagues, right? And so we actually have a pro golfer named Colin Morikawa. He is in the top 4 in the world. And we actually did a partnership with him on Instagram as well as a TV commercial that he filmed for us. So we became his golf bag sponsor. That's actually a thing where you put your logo on someone's golf bag. And we wanted to announce that partnership in advance of a TV spot that just debuted last week. And so we were actually super lucky. Colin and his girlfriend were fostering rescue puppies during the pandemic, and then they got a new puppy. So to announce the bag, he actually put his brand new puppy in the pocket of the bag. So it was a debut of the puppy and it was a debut of the sponsorship. And let's be real, I think people were more excited for the puppy content than the US Bank bag sponsorship, but the likes, the engagement, people saying congrats on getting a new sponsor. So we really said, hey, Colin, we're your sponsor, but really we're your partner. And we think that you know your audience and your influence a lot better than we do. So we just said, you know, tag us, obviously say that you're sponsored by us. But other than that, it's really up to you to decide what this should look like. And we did the same thing when we created a TV commercial, knowing that linear TV, you know, and obviously products like Hulu, et cetera, YouTube, we just said, what kind of TV commercial would you want to make? And we partnered with him and his mental coach and developed something really great. So I think when it comes to these partnerships, we felt that he would be better at raising awareness than we would, because it's just, as I said, you have to go to where these people are. And to others' points, they're really on social media, right? And so I think when you look at tactics versus the older generation, maybe email marketing or direct mail was really effective, but now it's video, going to social, and they're not necessarily super inclined to come to our website, so go to where they are.
Got it. I love the creativity and like out of the box ideas. Like I just love the fact that brands have been really open. You know, there's definitely some tried and true behaviors that still, you know, maintain, but just to be able to open up new avenues and then trust the process, take risks. That's been interesting to hear. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the platforms that you guys are currently on and kind of what that means as part of your generally marketing mix?
Yeah, so right now we are very much focused about storytelling, where our guests are and where the guests we want to be. We have a nice mix of folks who are, you know, lifelong Marriott Bonvoy members, but we have a lot of folks who are just testing the waters, and we love to have it, who might not be members but want to know more of what we have to offer. So again, we've been leaning into them where they are comfortable and where they want to be. So very much on social. We've been taking the trends that we've identified for social listing. And in fact, Marriott Bonvoy this past fall, every month, every few weeks was kind of leaning into different trends, whether it was about, you know, all about on the road, right? Which was the story of our lives last summer. You might not have been as comfortable getting on a plane, but you were totally fine, getting in a car and driving. So we were pulsing this content throughout in like really interesting and creative ways. Marriott Bonvoy Traveler, our newsletter, also was putting out like our top destinations in terms of, we're seeing interesting things around the Baltic Sea and, what's happening in, the back roads of Australia, and really just different things to kind of get that, thinking cap on and get folks looking to book their next, bucket list trip, or at least consider it, because, the time is coming fast. And in fact, summer in some places is actually getting crazy domestically. So, we love to see it. So that's where we've been leaning in terms of the inspirational storytelling that we can do over social.
And I just want to chime in really quickly on something that Rachel said, which is the importance of pivoting for both cultural moments, but also disruptive moments. So we were working on our Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month celebration and social media strategy for May. And then seeing everything that happened, now this has really become more of a Stop Asian Hate campaign. And we're not going to wait for May. Just because May is a celebration month doesn't mean that you don't respond until then, right? So I think that Rachel really hit it on the head, that there is an expectation of Gen Z that brands are taking strong positions. And I can say that for us personally here at US Bank, we're also very closely watching the trial of Derek Chauvin. So that's right actually next to the office that I worked in pre-pandemic. And so it's something where, again, we're looking at what's happening in the community and saying, well, we have this social content, we're not going to schedule it in advance, but also we need to be prepared to pivot depending on the outcome and depending on how the community is feeling. So I think that with this audience and just in general, there's really an expectation of flexibility, but also that we've just had more disruptive moments than ever before. And you can't just ignore them or sort of say business as usual, let's put out content about cookware or about financial services products when there's such challenging times happening.
I love that you mentioned that. It's definitely not always about, tentpole events and things like that, and just saying things for the sake of it. It's really tapping into what your consumers are, who your consumers are, and what really affects them in order to, create a brand message that is obviously true to your identity, which you guys have done really well, and, continues to permeate these audiences in a really authentic way. I'm going to shift a little bit about sort of like your roles and talk a little bit about historic, or maybe not historically, but when we were all Gen Z age, I want to say like coming maybe just 18 plus. We don't have any ages right now, but assuming we're all above the age of 18, when we were back then, did you see yourself in your roles that you are now? And was this always the trajectory that you had then? Was this always like the goal, I guess, thinking about the times that you guys are in right now?
Those were the best times.
I know.
Pre-kids, pre-responsibility. Yeah, I actually have a newborn and a 3-year-old toddler at home, so I often think about the Gen Z days. So I think for me, when I was 18, 20, I saw myself in a creative field. I actually thought that was going to be fashion design, and ended up going into undergrad studying finance and art, which seems crazy, but wanted to get a good job and set kind of a foundation for something in business, but also still have that creative outlet. And spent 6 years in consulting and would never do that again. Just looking back, I think just leaning into, what my gut was telling me at that point in time, and making a change sooner is probably something. If I could tell my, 22-year-old self to do something different, it would be that. But I think, in my current role, it is very creative, a very fluid entrepreneurial type of culture. So I feel like role is one thing, but also the place and the people you surround yourself with is another, and that can ignite creativity even if it's not within your job description. So that's where I'm at.
And for me, post-college, this didn't even exist. So I didn't even the semblance of what this was or where this could go. I similarly started in consulting, and I find every job I've had, I've learned what I like. And what I don't want to do anymore. And so, took all those great learnings from consulting and pivoted over to business school to reinvent myself and continue to reinvent myself. I found really attractive the opportunity in companies to actually hop around and try new things. I feel like I learn by doing, and sometimes I learn what I like, and sometimes I learn what I don't. And I learned where I want to kind of double down that, sitting in front of the computer with a spreadsheet, although I'm very good at it, I actually like humans. So how can I do that more, be it Zoom or otherwise? So I feel like my career has been a fluid one where I've just kind of let myself have the rein to do whatever I do it well, and then, keep trying new things.
I share that sentiment. I nod about figuring out what you don't want to do. Maybe not always knowing exactly what you do, but definitely what you don't can be very telling as you move forward. Katie, do you want to add?
Yeah, I think that one thing that I say to Gen Z is that you can actually make immense community change and difference, even within for-profit corporations. So I worked in politics when I got out of college. Then I did a year of AmeriCorps. So I taught in a school in St. Paul for moderate income families and a lot of people struggling with being unhoused. And so I had a really long journey to get kind of to, okay, I'm going to settle in and work at a company that is a for-profit. And I think sort of I had an experience of, to make a difference, you have to be in the community, right? Kind of boots on the ground. And I still think that you do need people to do that. But I say you can actually make immense change in communities through corporations. And so I would say that that's really where my pivot came, was working at US Bank and working at United Health Group. I actually saw both the monetary impact that we can make through our foundations, but also the ability to enact change, right? So for example, our CEO does literally meet with the president. So there's an opportunity, and we have, days on the Hill where we're lobbying for policies. And obviously some of those policies benefit our company, of course, but some of them lead to structural and systemic change that is better for many people. And so I think that sounds very flippant, and hopefully it doesn't come across that way, but just, it took me a while to get to a point where I saw the change that companies can make, especially for-profit companies. And now actually I would argue that without their support, the whole system could not actually move forward the way that it does.
I'm glad that you made that distinction, because definitely a lot of times Gen Z, there's people looking for roles that definitely make a difference, make an impact, and they might think that they're siloed in organizations that are only nonprofit. But yeah, to your point, there's so much work that corporations can do as well. Has there been a specific through line? So thinking about, again, career trajectory, some may have been linear, some may have not. Has there been a through line, something that you always stuck with as you navigated each role, once starting into your careers, and then where you are now?
I actually think the through line really is doing things that I didn't know a lot about, right? So actually that I think you have, and when I look to hire people, I don't look to hire people for a specific skill, but their emotional intelligence, their ability to have empathy, to be creative, to be strategic. And I would say that in a lot of roles, for example, when I went into healthcare, I had never worked in healthcare before. I had never worked in insurance, but I did that. And I think that in general, the biggest piece of advice I would say is lean to where you're actually not comfortable. And that's something that I definitely tell Gen Z is, if it feels comfortable, if it feels completely right, you're probably not in the right place, right? Because when we're a little bit uncomfortable, that's when we have that opportunity to grow. And I would say even for the role I'm in now, I had worked in an agency for 6 months when I was quite young, and had never worked with agencies since then. And now I'm an agency relations director, right? Because I just kind of said, sure, I'll learn this. So I think you're smarter than you think you are. You can learn new skills. Don't be afraid to take a leap.
I would echo, make sure to take risks. What's the worst thing that can happen? That you find something different, that you might not love it, but you like it, but you learn something and you meet some great people. In hindsight, I wish I had done more of that. And it's something that I feel like, just lean in. There's really, the sky's the limit, and everything you add just like broadens your toolkit.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think similar to Katie, when I am hiring people to join my team, I look for this roll up your sleeves, self-starter. If they don't know something, they're going to research it or talk to people to figure it out. And it's a very generalist skill set that I think is, it's taken me years to figure out how to find that and how to screen for that during the recruiting and interviewing process. And what I've learned personally is that is a trait that's almost inherent in like someone's DNA. It's very hard to teach that. And it comes with experience. So that I would say super important. And then in terms of the, taking risks and getting outside your comfort zone, when I was in my consulting career for a very long time, it took me a while to figure out like why I didn't feel totally comfortable and confident. And at the end of the day, I really hated financial services. It's like I worked hard. I could make a PowerPoint deck. I could, stay late until 2 a.m. and put stuff into a spreadsheet and stay organized. So the project management skill that I developed from that was great, but like the subject matter, I never felt confident in. And so it really, I said this before, like if I could change something, looking back on that time, and I think being a little bit more confident to like push myself and pivot and reinvent myself earlier. Hindsight's 2020, but it did, that experience solidified, I think, a really valuable skill in me, and also taught me to figure out like, all right, what is it that I love, and how do I create time and make time to like reinvigorate that utility that I had, back in undergrad, where I had a right brain and a left brain plan, and how do I then turn that energy into something that I'm really passionate about?
I love that. I always say I agree in that sentiment of going into a direction that you might feel uncomfortable, but it's the challenge that's going to change you. They say that a lot in fitness classes even. It's some of the things that make you uncomfortable that get you to where you want to be. So I love that through line, honestly. What would you guys say has your definition, for example, of success? Thinking about success and what that might mean to you, has that changed over the years? And even as you look to the future, does that definition still mean what it did back then?
I feel that success really changes as life evolves. So your definition of success is 21 is not the same at 25, is not the same at 30, and none of them are wrong. It just is what it is. It's where you're at. It's what you need to achieve. So at some points it might be, getting to the top of the ladder. At others, it might be learning as much as possible. For others, it might be, I know my next 2 steps from now, and in order to get that, I need to build up those skills so I can get there. So I feel like it's just something that's iterative, and to just be comfortable with the fact that it's going to change and evolve just like you.
And I would say that one of my biggest learnings I identify with Rachel is I did a lot of international work when I worked at United Health Group. So we had a lot of workers were in the Philippines and in India. And so their 9 o'clock in the morning was my 11 o'clock, which meant that I frequently worked between midnight and 2. And I had a boyfriend then, and he was lovely, but then he became a fiance, and then he became a husband, and then we actually formed a life together. And so what I kind of realized was actually, I don't want to work these hours, and it's okay to take a step back and really reclaim your time. But when I was younger, I felt that wasn't okay. So I agree that your definition of success changes over time, and sometimes that becomes preserving your health and your happiness more. And I would also say too that one thing that's interesting about making moves and knowing 2 moves ahead is sometimes it's okay to make a lateral move. And I think that when you're 22, it feels that you can only climb up the ladder, but sometimes there might be a skill that you're missing, or an area of your organization where, oh gosh, I actually don't know anything about that. And making a lateral move for 18 months or 2 years actually can really build your career and can be seen as a willingness to grow. And I think that that's a really big difference. Sometimes people think success only means moving up, but I think sometimes it can mean moving laterally, especially if you're gaining a new skill.
I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah. So I would say success, I'm in a very, very different stage in my life now. And I think that one of the learnings that I've had, both personally and professionally, more recently over the last 2-3 years is, how do I make time for myself when I have increasing demands at home? I am managing a team, I'm managing a toddler, sometimes managing a husband, and really making sure that I stay grounded. And this sounds really like potentially crazy, but what helped me so much is thinking about almost like my own career and how I spend my time in like a brand strategy framework. This is like super, I'm nerding out right now, but like, what are my values? What am I gonna allow to like bend outside of those, and in what context? And what am I not? And always coming back to that, which like for me, I had to write it down. I had to put it, in a desk drawer, take it out sometimes when I was like, all right, I need to work late tonight and I have a child screaming trying to get into my room. And it's like, things change and life evolves and life takes over. And that definition of success is always going to be fluid and always going to be changing. But to me, it's been just so helpful and incredibly important to make sure I stick behind those values, and managing up when I need to.
And it's okay to say no.
Yeah.
No is we all hear this. We've all seen those inspirational photos, but no really is a complete sentence. And it's okay to say no, or just to be very honest and vulnerable with your team, whether that's a team that you manage or people above you, just to say, I have something going on right now, right? Whether you want to go into the details or not, say, I will be fully present tomorrow, but I just can't get this done today. And to acknowledge that at times, right? We're not all super women. We've been at this pandemic for a year, and that's okay to say no.
I love that. I love to hear that in general, and I think a lot of people need to hear that, regardless if you're Gen Z, regardless if many people who are well into their careers at this point. I think that that's just sound advice. I was just gonna leave it with, I know Ziad's here. I was gonna ask if you guys could share like something that audiences, young audiences, again of all ages, could do on a regular basis. What's like a ritual that you might do, whether it's like reading new things, journaling, maybe it's talking yourself up before big meetings. Is there anything that you would offer Gen Z audiences out there to do, adopt on a daily basis in order to feel, the encouragement to move forward in their careers in a positive way?
Mine is take long walks outside. Get out outside, get away from screens and technology, just put the phone down, and then you're going to problem solve. So frequently I try to take a long walk every day after work. It's very privileged to be able to do that, but I find that it's a way to wrap up my day. And then I realize mistakes that I may have made throughout the day, right? I'm literally like a math error and say, oh, I need to email that person, but it helps me problem solve and figure out what do I need to do the next day. And without kind of getting fresh air. And honestly, I find that we're so into screens that stepping away from a screen is genuinely one of my keys to success. If you can't step away from a screen, your brain is rewired differently, is what I would say.
I needed that.
Yeah, I need to do more of that. Coming from the woman who spent 2 hours on Instagram last night until midnight.
Step away from the screen.
Trying to figure out what I should buy. Anyway, as soon I'll hopefully be able to travel and redirect that energy to something productive. So I would say, just to echo Katie, I think getting away from screens, I think what's also so important is like, we're all living in this like Microsoft Teams, Slack, like always on, like constantly being messaged. And we're also working from home where the boundaries are not as clear. And what I'm telling my team and also myself is like, get off Teams and get off Slack when you need to focus, because it is truly like your brain doesn't work that way, and you can't focus on a project, seeing it through to completion, if you're constantly fielding, what about this, what about that, and kind of problem solving live. It's really, really tough. So I think in addition to getting out, exercising, fresh air, like, getting out of the Slack channels.
And I fully subscribe to the fresh air. I'm committed. Everyone knows you don't like, after work, there is a walk to be had. It could be literally pouring and I just like bundle up or freezing. It has to happen. I've also taken the time to listen to podcasts. So it's just a way, I don't have the time or the energy to look at another screen or consume anything else. But for some reason, listening, and it doesn't even have to be business related, but just about the world today or what's happening or keeping a pulse on things. It helps me stay grounded, and something about the fresh air. I feel like I'm actually present for that moment.
Yep.
Awesome. Go take a walk, everyone. I
And
love this. Thank you, ladies. I know that was quick. What time goes by really fast, but I think you guys gave a ton of insight, and I know the audience is super appreciative. So thank you guys for being here this morning.
Thanks
thank
for
you.
having
Yeah.
us.
No, guys,
Great.
thank you all, Tiffany, Katie, Rachel, and Einat for being here. I mean, I had a great time listening. And Katie, it was funny when you mentioned the older side of Gen Z, because I am the older side of Gen Z, and I feel very, very old at 22. But I love to hear how conscientiously y'all are centering Gen Z and creators and TikTok and where society is headed. And I certainly think as I age and as I go gray, my definition of success is certainly evolving and changing, right? And in the last year, it has so often, right? I was in 4 cities per week pre-pandemic, right? And in the last year, right, virtually, the company has grown from 4 full-time employees to 16, and navigating that with Zoom fatigue and with everything has felt like a lot. But hearing from y'all and y'all doing it while being parents and moms is much more chaotic. And much harder than anything that I am juggling. So that was wonderful to hear your all perspectives. But Rachel, you have to know that 2 hours on Instagram is nothing. We're scratching the surface of what you could be doing on Instagram and what Gen Z is doing on Instagram and TikTok and Discord and other platforms, and the magic that creates. And I don't think that's a waste of time, because you're better at your job in marketing the more literate you are in the platforms that we're using. And so that was not a waste of time. That was cultural literacy, research, consumer insights, all the important things that we need to do to be the best marketers and human beings that we can be, because social listening is everything in our jobs. So with that, I'm glad I got to socially listen to you all. And thank you all for being here. And I look forward to keeping the conversation going about Gen Z, about purpose, about TikTok and beyond, because